come to work, so my peoples come first. I got worldwide family all over the earth, and I worry about them all for whatever it's worth.
We have now with us Saeed Veladbeji. Did I pronounce that right?
That should be fine.
Oh, that would be fine. You are Executive Director of GCRI, Global Center for Risk Innovation in Toronto. The topic today is Frontiers of Democracy. Tell us a little bit about your center, and you know, this is so apropos when we're discussing tools for an inclusive future. Thank you so much for joining us, Saeed.
Well, welcome, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to participate in this terrific series of talks and discussions on social impact and blockchain. And yeah, I definitely want to get into what we do at the end of the discussion, but the Global Center for Risk and Innovation is an extension of a series of action and events that led to our participation as a group of activists in World Social Forum in 2016 in Montreal. And we wanted to give it a little bit more pragmatic edge and get into the development projects with the civil societies around the world. So that's the origination of Global Center for Risk and Innovation, and I can get into the more details if that's okay with you and everyone. I can share the screen and then start my presentation here. Well, basically, the talk that I want to focus here, I would like to mention a few points that what I think is missing from the general discourse of blockchain and social impact. Not missing at the surface, maybe it's missing at the technical level as well, and its general approach of developments in every corner of technology development or infrastructure development that gives power to decentralized societies and technologies at large. We often come to this sentiment that democracy is an essential component of development. And if you if you participate in any conference around sustainable development or SDGs or UN activities in recent years, it's more focused on certain topics and certain sentiments that I want to focus here. So by democracy here, I focus on liberal democracy as a form that is dominating the entire spectrum here. And also, I want to get into the cleavages and interconnections of the global politics and in the geopolitics of political economy, and also get into the connections to the movement and civil society and how that connects to blockchain and technologies that we discussed today. So I hope that I can manage the time here and get everything in order. So the type of democracy here actually refers to a diverse set of different managements. I'm sure you know a lot of these things would be very primitive to most of you, but I would like to go through them because I need them for the one of the most brilliant use cases in recent years, which I think is really important for this discussion. So I think looking at the democracy, it's really important to understand that democracy is not just one-dimensional or one type of phenomena which everyone agrees on, and then we move forward. But it's a series of events and series of, let's say, policy making at global and national level led to a world order in different levels. So the first of it, and then the most important one maybe to this discussion, is the interconnection that happened in interdependence that accelerated these technologies that we know today. But there was different system before that, and it was United Kingdom mostly dominating the international monetary system and also global governance at different levels, and their currency was the most respected, trusted in different ways, and was treated as the base economy. But that changed after the World War, and US through a series of events replaced US dollar with that previous regime. Here in liberal democracy, we see that after that replacement of the US in global governance and international monetary fund, there is a certain type of democracies that is preferred, which is liberal democracy, and it came as a kind of embedded liberalism in different policies and agendas around the world. If your country or if your state or if your region is not developed enough, so we have to develop it. That was the ethos of that era from global north perspective. And the strategies was to cement the US position at the top level, and the rest of the world follows. How this happened through a series of, as I said, events and laws and regulations that have been passed, and one of the most important ones, and maybe the cornerstone of U.S. Let's say trade policies, was Smoke-Hawley Tariff Act of 1938, which is still in place, and since then is playing a crucial role in how U.S. is treating the other countries, and also how superpowers of the North are dominating the global South in a very unjust and crucial way. So this is the basis of what we later on understand as the Bretton Woods Order and the organization that come together, and they form bodies of, let's say, organizations that fills the global governance vacuum of, let's say, policies in different levels that affects millions of people or billions of people at the time of crisis or problems that no government can change that or affect that at the global level. So UN and different organizations have been accelerating this unilateralism and multilateralism under different sentiments and under different policies ever since. So there's a correlation between the global governance infrastructures that came out of the US policies or let's say global North, Western democracies type of liberal democracy, and they dominate the entire spectrum of the International Monetary Fund, and they centralize the entire spectrum of deciding on the future of any development agenda by controlling the capital that is flowing into these programs. And we see that the consensus that is going on, maybe not formally, but in different ways, this has been a skeleton of neoliberal consensus that we refer to, which was later on called Washington-Brussels consensus, and since 1980s gained momentum in accelerating free markets, deregulations, and most of the policies that affect poor and working class and peoples at the bottom of the pyramid very hardly. Again, we have the specific mechanisms of these organizations that affect millions of people. For example, World Bank has a mechanism to score countries by goodness for development, and you can see if you go into the details of these policies and programs, obviously you can see a lot of issues with it. For example, it's absolute freedom for free trade and minimum or maybe no protection for working people, which gives enormous opportunity to foreign investments and other aggressive austerity measures. And we see it in the 1990s, we have challenges in the main system, which is really comes back to a challenge between neoliberalism and neo-statism, and these two mechanisms are being used to discriminate a lot of people in different ways who are not even participating in both of these school of thought in a very democratic way. So we can see the results of these organizations or these policies in a long run, which is really a concern in different levels, and this is properly been addressed in different levels. So far, we're only talking about, let's say, economic issues or International Monetary Fund or how those organizations and institutions are affecting us. What about civil rights and democracy, if we want to include them? We know that there is a general, let's say, rhetoric and discourse that the nation states and national sovereignty is a matter of security issues, and it's really hard to open that up for external, let's say, intervention. And there's different rhetorics to support this idea, so we leave it at here, but we can see definitely at the global governance that there is a disconnection if we can agree on the, let's say, financial terms for economic needs, but there is a delay or there is a conscious gap to address civil rights or anything at that scale for various reasons, which some of them might be really valid at some level. So basically, what we see as a response to the global to the current situation and status quo is that the programs are being introduced to fill the gap at the global governance level and push the governments to include this social impacts into the system. But let's look at it how U.S. is, for example, is not accepting Paris Agreement or is not believing in any of this global governance, as clearly the president of the United States right now is stating in different levels. So to map that, we really need to understand how different groups are participating in the domestic economy and how those groups are connected to the government. Absolutely, we know that policy preferences goes back to two maybe main elements here, which is the type of assets and how the income earned are going to be affected by those policies in the long run. What happened here, maybe it's time to start talking about the technology and then how this affects the entire spectrum for the, sorry. It was during the Reagan and Thatcher era in the US and the UK, which all of us know, that a series of aggressive austerity measures came to play and tried to weaken the opposition parties by taking away the support of working class or different community organizations who were supporting, let's say, Labor or Democratic Party in the US. And that general policy had different layers of, let's say, for example, you know, the aggressive behavior toward youths and so-called hippies at that time was absolutely an insult to civil movements. But in general, you can see that the replacement of the Silicon Valley with the working class interest since then, and it happened during the Bill Clinton because there was no or less maybe power in hands of unions and worker representatives at the global, at the local level, which is totally we can feel it today in what we know as a surveillance capitalism. We cannot get away from fake news, deepfakes, and all the problems that is being created by the social media and the interests of Silicon Valley companies who we know what they do in different layers of privacy and surveillance to only satisfy the financial needs of certain people. So what happens here is, as George Agamben rightfully addresses, is the state of exclusion, which a lot of people are going to be left out of these policies, and start working on different solutions and problems that can be addressed by technology. And here we go. We have the hero of our times, and in my opinion, one of the most important figures of recent blockchain civil society solutions, which we can all learn from. So this is really a great example of how Sunflower Movement comes and addresses those trade agreements, those international treaties and local treaties that really harms the very soul of the local economies and workers who are affected by this system. We know that the roots of the Sunflower Movement was around the trade agreement between China and Taiwan, but the recent maybe or more in 2016, the manifesto published on Utopia for Public Action was actually a statement for safeguarding local communities against a virus that they call virus Uber or Airbnb or shared economies. So this is really an initiative mood or leadership that we can all learn about from Sunflower Movement, and how they come together as a group and challenge these areas with the positive activism and good actions. But if we get into the everyday talks and everyday politics and everyday discussions, you hear that who cares about this civic rights and who cares about these agreements? I don't have even hope for tomorrow or a very immediate needs. Well, I think some people care, and frontiers of democracy in my talk and here and always will be the people who who care. And definitely in the case of Taiwan, we had those people come together and provide a robust solution and model for us using DLT technologies and blockchain and open source, open data, and a combination of this, let's say, a new culture, post-party culture in politics, which is giving robust tools and possibilities to the civic movements. It's really an interesting development that we can learn from. And we can see, and this is really important part of the conversation, because you see it in all those three areas, blockchain is very compatible with the very nature of democracy itself. These three components are extracted from Amartya Sen's idea on democracy. And why democracy are important, I just added some layers of functions to the blockchain industry and how they're compatible with the very nature of the importance of the democracy in itself. Therefore, in my opinion, parallel to democracy itself is the tools and infrastructure and digital enablement that we need for those ideas. And already we see the blockchain voting mechanism is being adopted in different ways and scenarios being tested. And previous panel, I had the honor to, converse and then exchange some ideas with the people on the panel and understand what they do. So I think this is very important that, all those infrastructure and layers coming from a technical and scientific perspective and complementing this general overview that we need to decentralize maybe some most important and problematic section and components of the global governance and local governance.